we get to meet another character. How he gonna affect our protagonist? Chapter 3. As Cheng Qian was apprenticed to Mu Qin earlier than Han Yuan actually became his fourth junior brother. Although Han Yuan was a little older than him, he had been Mu Chan's shut-door apprentice, when for only a few days before he became a senior brother. Obviously, the back door of Fuyao Sect was not shut tight. As for the beggar's chicken, naturally most of it found their way into his master's stomach. However, even chicken couldn't shut Mu Chen up. Where was the chicken from? He asked while eating. He seemed to have a habit of preaching. Han Yuan had a skillful tongue. He didn't use hands to gnaw a bone. He simply put it whole into his mouth, puffed up his cheeks for a couple of times, and then chewed the gristle for a short while. At last, only the clean and intact chicken bone was left. Bah! He spat out the bone rudely and replied, "I stole it in the village ahead." Confucius said, "Chew with mouth closed, lay silent." The beggar's chicken was certainly delicious. Cheng Qian was hesitating whether to eat a drumstick as his master did or not when he heard their conversation. After learning the ins and outs, he withdrew his hand resolutely and started nibbling at his pancakes that were as hard as stones wordlessly aside. What flavor could the chicken be when the cook was such an indecent person? From this perspective, his Tao heart and principles were firmer than his incompetent master's, in spite of his young age. Apparently, Han Yuan's answer didn't spoil Mu Chen Zhenren's appetite at all. He just spared a half a mouth from chewing and said, wagging his head, "Taking without asking. That's what thieves do. As cultivators, how could we do pilfering? That's improper. Do it no more." Han Yuan mumbled yes. The little beggar knew nothing about manners, so he didn't dare to retort. Pilfering is forbidden. Presumably swindling is fine then, Cheng Qian thought sarcastically. But presently he remembered the tolerance he granted his master just now in the downpour. He could only sigh to himself gloomily. So be it. The fourth junior brother had a small nose and an underbite. His small eyes glinted with slipperiness, which made him quite unlovable. Cheng Qian didn't like Han Yuan at first sight. Not only was he unsightly, but also he took the title of junior brother. Everything concerning brothers, Cheng Qian found it hard to develop an affection for. But he just buried his dislike deep in heart and pretended to be friendly and agreeable on the outside, although not very tactfully. In Cheng Qian's family, newly cut clothes were on his big brother's body, and milk pastes with sugar were all into his little brother's mouth. In a word, good things would never descend on him. Conversely, he was often asked to do housework. Cheng Qian didn't have a lenient disposition, thus grudges naturally took root in his heart. On the other hand, he also bore what the old Tongsheng used to say in mind. The father should be kind, the son should be obedient, and good brothers should show love and respect. So he often felt that his grudges made no sense. It was too early for such a young boy to have self-restraint. Cheng Qian couldn't really stifle his grudges, so he had to pretend to have no word of complaint. Even if he was admitted into Fuyao Sect, now he still didn't change a thing. Now that his master went back on his words and unshut the door, Cheng Qian had no choice but to lump it and try to be a senior brother up to the mark. Along the journey, if there was any errand, he, the senior brother, would run. If there was any food, he would let his master to enjoy first, junior brother the next, and himself the last. It was never an easy job. Cheng Qian had to reflect upon himself frequently, in case that he should damage his temperate, kind, courteous, restrained, and magnanimous image. Cheng Qian often made such excessive demands on himself. His father had been poor and wretched for a lifetime. The little beggar could even blurt out a story about how he defeated a weasel that was 1 zhang. Footnote: zhang, a unit of length equal to 3.333 meters in length, and snatched a chicken from its mouth, as though he was enlightened by master's remarks on pilfering. Footnote: pilfering? The original word literally means to steal chickens and dogs, and it also refers to weasels as they steal chickens and dogs. He gesticulated merrily when making up the story, which was well presented and full of twists in its plot, with opening, development, transition, and conclusion. Every detail manifested his wisdom and mightiness. "How on earth can a weasel be 1 zhang long?" asked Cheng Qian. trying to question him. It must be a weasel spirit. Master, can a weasel ascend to a spirit? Han Yuan defended himself with his chin up and chest out, feeling that he was challenged. Hearing the story about a weasel spirit, their master seemed to be offended by some word, for his expression was kind of strange, as if he had a toothache or stomachache. There was a moment of silence before he answered unhurriedly and absent-mindedly. All nature objects have souls. Generally, they can all ascend to spirits. Han Yuan raised his chin cockily as though he was greatly encouraged by his master's words, and then said deliberately, "Senior brother, you marvel because you've seen little. If human beings can ascend to immortals, animals can turn into spirits absolutely." Cheng Qian didn't reply but sneered inwardly. Supposing a weasel was really one Zhang Long, the odds were that it could hardly support his body with only 4 legs, for it was so long that its stomach was bound to trail on the ground as it moved. Is it possible that a demonic cultivator took the trouble to cultivate only for a sturdy iron stomach that was rubbed bare by the ground? With regards to what demonic cultivators strived for, Cheng Qian had no idea. But he did know what Han Yuan wanted. The little beggar was as fierce as leeches in the sewer. Once he scented the blood, he would desperately attach himself to it. Han Yuan was striving for their master's favor against him. The little beggar would snatch at every chance to show off his bravery, and in the meantime, wouldn't forget to bring shame on his weak and vulnerable senior brother. Cheng Qian found it very funny to watch Han Yuan run about trying to disgrace him, so he did an imitation of the old Tang Sheng and made a judgment on his 4th junior brother. In his mind, a gentleman is firm in adversity, while a villain will give himself up to evil. "Little bastard, what kind of louse are you? There's a river in front. I wanted to catch fish for master and senior brother, but there's a dog on the bank. It ran after me," said Han Yuan. Cheng Qian sighed to himself. Certainly he was also afraid of vicious dogs. But Han Yuan's eyes were darting everywhere, and as he had explained, he was bullied by a dog because he wanted to catch fish for the master and him. Now he asked his senior brother for help. How could the senior brother shrink? He picked up a big stone, weighed it in his hand, and stood up. Then he said, "Fine, I'll go with you." With a kind and pleasant countenance, again, Cheng Qian made up a plan. If by any chance they met the dog, he'd hit the junior brother's head with that stone and make sure his head was beaten to a broken watermelon, then leave him to that dog. However, by the time they arrived at the bank, the dog had gone, leaving several rows of footprints. Cheng Qian looked down and studied the footprints for a while. He inferred that the vicious dog was less than 1 shi in length and was likely a small, stray dog. Han Yuan, you bastard, coward, idiot, boaster, and wastrel. You have no sense of shame and know nothing other than how to fawn master. Cheng Qian told off Han Yuan in his heart as he put his hands that were holding a brick behind his back. Looking mildly at his good-for-nothing junior brother, he wasn't in the mood to hit him now. Cheng Qian didn't want to bother himself taking umbrage at him. When they came back with fish, their master was awake and looking at them kindly with gratification. Once Cheng Qian met his master's eyes, he had a terrible feeling in his stomach and somehow felt like throwing up. Before he could say anything, Han Yuan had gone up fawningly. He embroidered a story about how senior brother wanted to eat fish, how he defeated a dog whose head was as large as a bull, and how he managed to dive into the river to catch fish. Cheng Qian, he was nearly angered to laughter by his talented junior brother. Like this, Cheng Qian, with an old charlatan and a little boaster, traveled for about half a month. Eventually, they made it to Fuyao Sect. It was the first time for Cheng Qian to travel so far. Thanks to the company of his weird master and junior brother, he had experienced many aspects of the human world. Hence, he became so composed that he even wouldn't be disturbed if mountains collapsed. At first, he didn't look forward to the place sounding like a loose organization. He thought that probably it was also a shabby temple in a desolate place, where he had to burn joss sticks and kowtow to the founder of Fuyao Sect, who was properly dressed and always wore a smile. But now it exceeded all Cheng Qian's expectations. Fuyao Sect occupied a whole mountain which was surrounded by water on 3 sides. Taking a look up from the foot, Chang Chian could have a good view of furious green waves and trees rippling in the breeze. Chirps of birds and insects mingled with cries of cranes once in a while. Occasionally, he could catch a fleeting glimpse of white silhouettes in the sky and feel a magical aura skimming over the mountain there and then. There were gentle stone steps extending from the foot to the top, and evidently they were frequently swept. A brook ran down from the top with clear and far-reaching gurgles, going up flights of steps to the mountain waist. Chang Chian saw dimly courtyards and houses above. An old stone gate covered with moss stood majestically at the waist. The two characters Fuyao were written on it in a vigorous but graceful style, like dragons flying and phoenixes dancing. Chang Chian was unable to tell whether the penmanship was good or bad. He only had the impression that the two characters were going to come alive and fly out of the gate, demonstrating some kind of loftiness as if they could really soar into the sky and dive into the sea. This place wasn't some kind of celestial mountain away from the human world, which was veiled by mist and clouds and where people were free of worldly cares. Yet there were unspeakable beauties among the mountain. As soon as Chang Chian stepped in the mountain, he could feel that he got much lighter with every breath. He got a limited view of the palm-sized sky through gaps of green leaves. A sense of vastness that one could feel when watching the sky from the bottom of a well flooded him, putting him at such ease that he was itching to shout and laugh around the mountain. But Chang Chian restrained himself. He didn't dare to shout at home lest he be beaten by his father, nor would he now in case he should lose the decency he gained through eavesdropping in front of his despicable junior brother. Master patted on the heads of his two apprentices and said kindly, "Now go to take a bath, burn incense, and get your clothes changed. Then I'll take you to visit the founder that always wears a smile," Chang Chian thought unconcernedly. "First, senior brother," said their master. End of the chapter. Whoa, okay, I thought this little beggar will be a friend of the protagonist, but it turned out not. And it was a real sect, as I predicted. Even though we don't know fully about what this place really is, it sounds good. Even sounds fantastic when we consider Chun Chian's old life. We gotta meet another character in next chapter. My prediction is he will be a significant character, maybe so good or so bad. What do you guys think? See you again. Bye.